Alrighty, friends, we are going to take a look at a page from our story, a page that we spent some time practicing yesterday to discuss finding the main idea. Yesterday, we practiced finding vocabulary in your exit ticket, but today you are going to practice answering some questions about the main idea and supporting details. So we want to make sure we pay extra close attention, so when it's your turn on your exit ticket, these examples will help you. So we're going to look at step 1 of our thinking steps for finding the main idea. Looking at this chart, to answer the question of what is the main idea, we need to first find the topic. And following that arrow right here, we know that the topic is going to be who or what the text is mostly about. So as I read this page, I want you to think about what is the topic? Who or what is the text mostly about? Okay, just my computer ready. Alrighty, here we go. I want you guys to follow along with the little red dot while I read. At last he stands. He chooses a stick and dips it into a can of syrupy paint. Slowly he circles the canvas, stepping around the edges, straddling the corners. Black lines form a tangled web. Now he chooses a brush, working toward the middle. Sprays of color, tan, teal, yellow, and white. An athlete with a paintbrush, he uses his whole body to make the painting. Layers build with each gesture, new colors emerging, blending, and disappearing into the wet surface. He swoops and leaps like a dancer, paint trailing from a brush that doesn't touch the canvas. I want to make a longer and longer line. I want to keep it going. Alrighty, now that we've reviewed this page, we want to think about the topic. Who or what is the text mostly about? We know that the only character discussed in this page is Jackson Pollock. So that already answers our question for who. The topic is Jackson Pollock. Some details that tell us what the main idea is. We want to know more about Jackson Pollock. We talked yesterday about how some details are that he uses a stick instead of a brush. He paints lines of colors. And he uses his whole body to paint. Alrighty, so now let's go back and highlight those details in the text. We know our topic, or who it's about, is Jackson Pollock. In the very beginning, we know that he dips a stick into the can of paint. This is important because usually painters use brushes. So already, this is a supporting detail that tells me more about how Jackson Pollock is painting. We also know that he paints lines of colors. He says at the very end, I want to make a longer and longer line. I want to keep it going. It doesn't talk about how he's painting the ocean. And looking at that picture in the text, we know that he's painting lines. That's what he wants to make longer and longer to show the energy and feelings that he has with the movement of those lines. And he doesn't just paint those lines with his hand or his arm. He uses his whole body. He straddles the canvas, which means it's in between his legs so that he can be on top of the whole thing. He is spraying the color, which doesn't necessarily mean that he's using a can. He could be flicking back the stick and letting it spray that way. He is an athlete. We know athletes are people who play sports. He's not playing a sport, but he is using his body like an athlete. He's using his arms, he's using his legs, he's using his core, he's using his back, he's using all of his body just like an athlete does to play sports. He's using his whole body to paint. So now that we know why those details are important, they tell all of these details that we just found in the text, tell me more about the topic. They tell me more about why Jackson Pollock is important on this page. So if I'm going to combine my topic with my details to answer this question and find the main idea, I can say the main idea is Jackson paints using his whole body and painting in his own style. Now, if we have to prove our thinking, because nowhere in the text does it say, hey, that's the main idea, we had to infer. We had to use our clues in the topic to make a guess about what the text is mostly about, which is that Jackson paints using his whole body and he paints with his own style. Now, if somebody says, well, how do you know that? We can go back and say, well, who it's mostly about or the topic is Jackson Pollock. And I know that he paints with his whole body in his own style because these are the details in the text that tell me. So let's look at another example, but this time we're going to really focus on the details. You guys can see that finding the main idea and finding the topic, the hard part about that is knowing, well, what details tell me more about the topic? What details are important in order for us to find the main idea? So if we look at our next page, we are going to really spend some time practicing step 2, which is to look for clues. Down here in purple, we already have the main idea, that the way that Jackson paints is new. But how do we know? What details support, if we think about our little bench, what details support the idea that the way that Jackson's style of painting is new? We are going to look for clues that are going to be those supporting details. And some different details that we might find, or some clues about the details, might be, what is the author saying about the topic, who or what it's about? What events or things that happen tell me more about who or what the page is about? And what are some examples or illustrations? So we're going to read this page and we're going to think about, do we see any of these clues to know which part of this page is a supporting detail that tells me about how Jackson's style of painting is new? Well, as I read, I'm going to highlight some clues that I think tell me how Jackson's style of painting is new. Some people will be shocked when they see what he has created. Some angry, some confused, some excited, some filled with happiness they can hardly explain. But everyone will agree, Jackson Pollock is doing something original, painting in a way no one has ever seen before. So you guys saw that I marked on the page in blue what I thought were some important clues in the text that support the main idea. These details in blue help me explain how I know that Jackson's style of painting is new. So if we start at the top, a detail that supports the main idea is that people were shocked and they had emotions that they could hardly explain. But all they were doing was looking at a painting. So how could they hardly explain a painting or how they were feeling about it when they've seen paintings before? They were shocked, angry, confused, and they couldn't explain why, because it was a new type of painting. So for a detail that supports the main idea is people had different emotions that they couldn't explain. They couldn't explain why they were feeling shocked or excited or confused. But they were all feeling differently and couldn't put words to it because it was something new. Another clue in the text that tells me this is the word original. We learned the word original yesterday, and we know an original means is when you do something for the first time. No one had ever painted by walking around the canvas and using a stick to splatter and fling the colors on. No, that's why the author uses the word original. This helps the reader understand that what he is doing is something that he's doing is something that is being done for the first time. It's different. So another clue that I can say is the word original means for the first time or different. And then we have also one more supporting detail in the text that tells us no one has ever seen before, which supports, it just states again the meaning of the word original. If no one has ever seen the way that he's painted before with all those lines of movement and color, it's going to be for the first time, which is part of the word original. So if no one has ever seen it before, that also tells me why maybe they couldn't explain what they were feeling. So all of these details that we just found for step 2 support or holds up the main idea that his style of painting is new. We see how we have the main idea at the top, his style of painting is new, and the details all come back to explain how or why. If the topic is Jackson Pollock and his style of painting, these details support that. They tell me more about the topic. They tell me that it's new, that it's original, that no one could explain it. They couldn't explain what? They couldn't explain how his style of painting was new, which is our main idea. So we see how both of those things go hand in hand like a puzzle piece. Supporting details and main idea always go together. And that's why we practice these steps. Now let's look at another example in the next video.